Stop the trial. I have something to say. The boy's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade, clear, sharp, impossible to ignore. Everything halted. The judge, a stern woman with silver-rimmed glasses, froze mid-sentence, her gavel suspended in the air. The defense attorney, caught mid-page shuffle, turned in shock. The prosecutor's mouth hung open as if someone had hit pause on him mid-argument. In the center of the aisle stood the boy, small, wiry, with messy blonde hair and wide blue eyes. No older than 10, yet his stance was unwavering, fists clenched tight at his sides. His sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as he shifted his weight. "Bailiff," the judge commanded, her voice sharp. "Get that child out of here." Before the bailiff could move, the boy raised his voice again, urgency crackling in the air. "You can't throw me out. I know something. Something that will change everything." His voice wavered, thick with emotion, but his resolve held firm. A ripple of shock spread through the courtroom. People gasped, whispered, craned their necks to get a better look. The judge slammed her gavel, trying to restore order, but her eyes never left the boy. Suspicion and curiosity battled in her gaze. "What could you possibly know, son?" she asked, her voice lower now, but just as firm. "This is a murder trial. You shouldn't even be here." The boy swallowed hard, his small chest rising and falling as he took a breath. "Because I know who really did it," he said. His voice trembled, but his words struck like a hammer. "And it wasn't him." He pointed to the defendant, a weary, hollow-cheeked man who sat in stunned silence at the defense table. A hush fell over the room. The defendant stared at the boy as if seeing a ghost. The judge leaned forward, her brows knitting together. "Who are you?" she demanded. "And what do you mean by that?" The boy opened his mouth to answer. Bang! The courtroom doors flew open. A man in a dark suit stormed in, his face pale, frantic. "Ethan," he called. "What are you doing here?" The boy flinched at the sound of his name but didn't turn around. His eyes stayed locked on the judge. "Please," he whispered now, his voice barely above a breath. "You have to listen to me." The judge hesitated. Then, she gave a curt nod to the bailiff. "Take him to my chambers," she instructed. "We'll continue this in private. Everyone else stays seated. This trial isn't over." The bailiff moved toward Ethan, placing a firm but gentle hand on his shoulder. As the boy was led toward the back, he glanced over his shoulder one last time, his gaze filled with both fear and determination. The heavy courtroom doors swung shut behind him, sealing the space in buzzing silence. This wasn't where Ethan's story started. Long before he stepped into that courtroom, he was just a regular kid from a small town in Ohio. The kind who played baseball until the streetlights flickered on, the kind who ate way too much pizza on Friday nights. But Ethan had a gift. He noticed things. Little details that most people missed. His mom always said he had an old soul, though Ethan never quite knew what that meant. Then, one summer afternoon, everything changed. He was riding his bike through the park when he saw them, a man and a woman, standing by the lake, locked in an argument. Too far to hear their words, but their body language told the story. The man pointed, sharp and angry. The woman shook her head, arms crossed tight. Something about it made Ethan stop. He ducked behind a tree and watched. A moment later, the man grabbed the woman's arm. She pulled back, her mouth moving in protest. The man looked around, his eyes darting. Then, in one swift motion, he shoved her into a car. Ethan's stomach turned. He wanted to do something, anything. But he was just a kid. What could he do? That night, he told his mom what he saw. She ruffled his hair and chuckled. "Probably just a couple arguing, sweetheart," she said. "Don't worry about it." But Ethan couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. The scene played in his mind over and over. Then, a week later, he saw the man's face again. On the news. His name was Lucas Hart. And he was on trial for murder. Alyssa Green, his girlfriend, was found dead in the woods near the park. Lucas was the prime suspect. Ethan's heart pounded. The man he saw that day, Lucas, looked desperate, but not angry. And Alyssa? She had dark hair. The woman in the car that day was blonde. The truth sat like a stone in Ethan's chest. He kept quiet at first, afraid no one would believe him. But as the trial loomed closer, the weight of what he knew grew unbearable, until he couldn't hold it in any longer. And now, standing in that courtroom, all eyes on him, he knew there was no turning back. Plunged into a nightmare, accused of a crime he swore he didn't commit. Now, out of nowhere, a kid, just a kid, had burst into the courtroom, claiming to know something that could change everything. Lucas barely had time to process what was happening before the judge returned, her expression unreadable as she took her seat. The courtroom, still buzzing from the unexpected interruption, fell into a tense silence. The prosecutor leaned forward, adjusting his tie, eyes sharp with suspicion. The defense attorney whispered something to Lucas, but his words barely registered. Judge Harper cleared her throat, then spoke. "Before we continue, I need to address what just happened," she said, her voice calm but firm. "A young witness has come forward with information that may be relevant to this case." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Ethan, still in the judge's chambers, couldn't see the effect his words had caused, but he could feel it, like the moment right before a storm breaks. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "I'm well aware," Judge Harper interrupted, holding up a hand. "Which is why we will proceed carefully. But if there is even the possibility of new evidence, I won't ignore it." She turned her gaze to the defense attorney. "Mr. Calloway, I will allow you to confer with your client while I review this matter in chambers. Court is adjourned until further notice." Her gavel struck once. The tension in the room didn't dissipate, it only shifted, coiling into something more uncertain. Lucas exhaled slowly, rubbing his face with his hands. He had stopped believing in hope a long time ago. But now there was a boy. A boy who had seen something. A boy who might just be his only chance. Back in the judge's chambers, Ethan sat rigid in his chair, fingers gripping the hem of his shirt. His mind was racing. Had he done the right thing? Would they even believe him? Judge Harper sat across from him, watching him carefully. "You understand," she said, "that what you've told me is very serious?" Ethan nodded. "You also understand that if you're lying, you could be interfering with a murder trial?" "I'm not lying," Ethan said, his voice firm despite the lump in his throat. The judge studied him for a long moment, then finally sighed. "I'm going to have an investigator look into your claim. If there's anything to it, we'll find out. But until then, you cannot discuss this with anyone. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." She leaned back in her chair, exhaling. "You're either a very brave boy, Ethan Miller, or a very reckless one." Ethan didn't know which he was either. All he knew was that he couldn't stay silent. Not anymore. All night suddenly felt too real. Someone was out there. Ethan's breath hitched as he slid out of bed as quietly as he could, his pulse hammering in his ears. He crept toward the window, every step feeling like it took a lifetime. Slowly, he pulled back the curtain just an inch, just enough to see. A shadow moved near the edge of the yard. His stomach twisted into a knot. Someone was there. For a split second, he thought about waking his mom, about grabbing his phone and calling 911, but something told him that whoever was outside wouldn't stick around for that. His fingers tightened around the curtain as he forced himself to stay still, barely breathing. The figure paused. Turned slightly. Ethan could make out the shape of a hood pulled low, obscuring their face. His skin crawled as the person stood there for what felt like forever, then slowly stepped backward into the shadows and disappeared. Ethan didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just stood there, staring at the empty space where the figure had been, his entire body locked up with fear. It wasn't just paranoia. It wasn't just in his head. Someone was watching him. And whoever it was didn't want him to keep talking. As silence filled the house, his pulse pounded in his ears. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The man wasn't leaving. Ethan crept back toward the window, careful not to make a sound. He peeked through the blinds just in time to see the man stepping off the porch and circling toward the side of the house. His heart nearly stopped. He's looking for another way in. Ethan backed away from the window, his breath coming in short, panicked bursts. He needed a plan. Now. He darted into the kitchen, grabbed the cordless phone, and punched in 911 again. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man outside my house, Ethan whispered, pressing himself into the corner of the room. He won't leave. I don't know who he is, but he's trying to get in. The dispatcher's tone sharpened. Stay on the line with me. Are you alone in the house? Ethan swallowed hard. Yes. Is the door locked? Yes, but he's... A sudden thump against the back door made Ethan jump. His grip tightened on the phone. He's trying to get in through the back. Stay where you are. Officers are on their way, the dispatcher assured him. Can you see him? Ethan didn't want to, but he forced himself to peek around the corner toward the back door. The man was there, his hand resting on the doorknob, testing it. The sunglasses made it impossible to see his eyes, but Ethan could feel the weight of his stare, like he knew Ethan was watching. And then, the worst part. The man smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was knowing. Calculated. Like he wasn't in a hurry. Like he had all the time in the world. Ethan's stomach twisted as fear gripped him like a vice. You still there? The dispatcher asked. Why, yeah, Ethan stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Stay put. The officers are only a few minutes out. A few minutes felt like an eternity. The man knocked one last time, slow and deliberate. Then, to Ethan's horror, he reached into his pocket and pulled something out. A small metal object glinted in the light. A key. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. How does he have a key? Before he could process what was happening, the sound of distant sirens filled the air. The man stiffened. He turned his head slightly, listening. Then, just as casually as he had arrived, he slipped the key back into his pocket, adjusted his jacket, and strolled toward the sidewalk. Ethan watched, frozen in place, as the man climbed into a dark blue sedan, the same make and model as the one he had seen that day in the park. The realization hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. It's him. The car pulled away just as the police cruiser screeched to a stop in front of the house. Ethan exhaled shakily, his entire body trembling. Whoever that man was, he wasn't just watching. He was warning him. In his room, staring at the keychain on his desk. It felt like a clue, a piece of something bigger, but no one else seemed to see it the way he did. If the adults weren't going to figure this out, then he would. Determined, he powered up his computer and started digging. He scoured old articles, photos, anything about Alyssa Green and Lucas Hart. Every detail mattered. If he could just find something, anything, that connected Alyssa to that park, to the man he had seen that day, maybe it would be enough. And then, something caught his eye. A news report from the week before Alyssa disappeared. It was a small piece, barely noticeable, about an argument outside a coffee shop downtown. A witness had reported a man and a woman fighting in the parking lot, the woman described as mid-20s, blonde, wearing a sunflower keychain on her bag. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. Blonde. Not Alyssa. That was it. The woman in the car wasn't Alyssa Green. She was someone else. Someone who had been with Lucas just days before Alyssa was killed. Which meant Lucas had been telling the truth. And worse. If the woman was still out there, it meant the real killer was too. Ethan barely had time to process the thought before his bedroom light flickered. And then, a sound. Not from outside this time. from inside the house. A slow, deliberate creak of a floorboard. Ethan's blood ran cold. Someone was inside, gripping his shoulders. "You did the right thing. This isn't your fault." Officer Ramirez leaned forward, her expression serious. "Ethan, what exactly did you see?" Ethan took a deep breath and told her everything: the argument in the park, the dark blue sedan, the sunflower keychain, and now the realization that the car in the photo belonged to Alyssa's ex. He even mentioned the strange man in the suit who had shown up at his house earlier. Ramirez scribbled furiously in her notebook, nodding as he spoke. When he finished, she tapped her pen against the page. "This changes things. If Alyssa's ex-boyfriend was never investigated, that's a serious oversight." Jessica's grip on Ethan's arm tightened. "Does that mean Lucas could be innocent?" Ramirez exhaled, closing her notebook. "It means we have reason to look deeper. And if what Ethan is saying is true, then someone out there really doesn't want him talking." She stood up and nodded to the other officer. "We'll put a patrol car outside your house tonight. If anything else happens, call us immediately." Ethan swallowed hard. This wasn't over. If anything, it was getting worse. After the officers left, Jessica locked every door and window before sinking onto the couch beside Ethan. "You're staying home from school tomorrow," she said, rubbing her temples. "And we're going to the courthouse together. If the police aren't going to fix this fast enough, maybe Miss Connor can." Ethan just nodded, exhaustion finally catching up to him. His body ached from the stress of the last few days, but his mind refused to rest. Somewhere out there, the real killer was watching. And now, they knew his name. The screen, her expression shifting from skepticism to something more serious. She glanced at her partner, then back at Ethan. This is something," she admitted, scrolling through the evidence. A direct threat before her disappearance, a matching car at the scene. "It's circumstantial, but it's worth looking into." Ethan's chest tightened with anticipation. "So, you believe me?" Ramirez exhaled, nodding. "I believe this needs to be investigated. But we have to be careful. If Kyle really is involved in Alyssa's death, he's already proven he'll do whatever it takes to keep the truth buried." Jessica folded her arms protectively around Ethan. "What happens now?" Ramirez straightened. "We'll bring him in for questioning. In the meantime, I need you both to stay put. If he's watching you, he knows we're onto him now. That could make him unpredictable." Ethan swallowed hard. He had wanted the police to take him seriously, but now that it was happening, the reality of it felt heavier than he expected. Ramirez and her partner stepped outside, calling for backup as they prepared to locate Kyle Becker. Ethan watched them go, his mind racing. He should have felt relief, things were finally moving forward, but instead, a gnawing fear took hold of him. Because deep down, he knew this wasn't over. Kyle had been careful. He had stayed in the shadows for months. He had avoided suspicion, let someone else take the fall. But now, Ethan had forced him into the light. And something told him Kyle Becker wasn't the kind of man to just let that happen. Units. Ethan's mind raced. What is he hiding in there? He pulled out his phone and checked for a response from Officer Ramirez. Nothing yet. His fingers hovered over the screen, debating whether to call her directly, but something stopped him. If Kyle was hiding something that could prove he was guilty, then waiting might mean losing his only chance to find out what it was. Ethan swallowed hard and took a deep breath. I just need to get a closer look. He ditched his bike behind a row of bushes and crept forward, keeping low as he approached the storage units. Kyle had gone into one of the units near the back, its rusted metal door left slightly ajar. Ethan pressed himself against the cool steel of a neighboring unit, straining to hear. Inside, Kyle was rummaging through something, muttering under his breath. Then, a metallic clank. Ethan peered through the narrow gap between the door and the frame, his heart hammering. Kyle was crouched beside a large, beat-up duffel bag. He unzipped it and pulled something out, a jacket, dark and weathered, covered in dirt. Then, underneath it, a folded piece of fabric. Ethan's stomach twisted. It was a dress. A woman's dress. And it looked stained. Kyle clenched his jaw, stuffing the clothes back inside the bag before grabbing a shovel, leaning against the wall. Ethan's blood ran cold. Is he trying to get rid of evidence? Ethan knew he had to act fast. He took a step back, reaching for his phone. Then his foot hit a loose rock. It tumbled forward, knocking against the storage unit door with a hollow clang. Ethan froze. Inside, Kyle went silent. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, Kyle rushed toward the door. Ethan barely had time to turn before the door slammed open, and Kyle's furious gaze locked onto him. "You," Kyle growled, his face contorted in rage. Ethan's body reacted before his brain could. He spun on his heel and ran. He bolted toward the trees at the edge of the lot, Kyle's footsteps pounding behind him. His breath came in ragged gasps as he pushed himself forward, but Kyle was faster, closing the distance. "Stop running, kid," Kyle shouted. Like hell he would. Ethan spotted a chain-link fence up ahead, its metal glinting in the afternoon light. He sprinted toward it, adrenaline surging through his veins. If he could just make it over. A hand snatched the back of his hoodie, yanking him backward with a force that knocked the air from his lungs. He hit the ground hard, pain jolting through his side. Kyle loomed over him, his expression wild with anger. "You should have stayed out of this," he spat. Ethan kicked out desperately, managing to scramble backward just as the distant wail of sirens pierced the air. Kyle's head snapped up. For a split second, he hesitated. And that was all Ethan needed. He rolled to his feet and sprinted toward the fence, climbing as fast as his shaking limbs would allow. He heard Kyle curse behind him, heard the sound of tires screeching as police cars skidded onto the dirt road. "Ethan!" Ramirez's voice rang out. "Get down from there." He barely registered her words as he reached the top of the fence and jumped, landing hard on the other side. He collapsed onto his hands and knees, gasping for breath as officers swarmed the lot. Kyle Becker didn't run. He stood there, fists clenched, as the police surrounded him. Ethan barely had the strength to lift his head as Officer Ramirez approached, her expression equal parts relief and frustration. "You really need to stop doing this," she muttered, but there was a hint of a smile in her voice. Ethan let out a weak, breathless laugh. "I got him, didn't I?" Ramirez sighed. "Yeah, kid. You got him." Ethan had finally uncovered the truth, but danger was closing in faster than ever. The pieces were falling into place, yet something still felt wrong, like a shadow lurking just beyond his vision. When he followed Kyle Becker to an abandoned storage facility on Route 9, he knew he was onto something big. But he also knew he couldn't face this alone. His hands shook as he called Officer Ramirez. "Ethan," she answered, her voice laced with concern. "Where are you?" "I followed Kyle Becker," Ethan said quickly, whispering as he crouched behind a row of rusted metal containers. "He's at an old storage facility. He went into one of the units. I think he's hiding something." "You what?" Ramirez's voice sharpened. "Ethan, that was dangerous. Stay put. I'm on my way." Ethan clenched his jaw, gripping his phone tighter. "Hurry. I don't think he'll stay long." The minutes stretched unbearably as Ethan kept his eyes locked on the storage unit Kyle had disappeared into. The silence was suffocating, every tiny sound amplified in his mind. Was Kyle getting rid of evidence? Or worse, was he preparing to vanish for good? Then, in the distance, sirens. Relief surged through Ethan as two police cars sped down the dirt road, dust kicking up behind them. Officer Ramirez was the first to step out, her hand resting on the holster at her hip. "Stay back," she ordered Ethan before turning toward the storage unit. "Kyle Becker." "Police. Come out with your hands up." A tense pause followed. Then the metal door creaked open, and Kyle stepped out, his hands raised in surrender. His face was pale, his eyes darting between the officers. "What's going on?" he demanded. "I haven't done anything." "We'll see about that," Ramirez replied as officers moved in, cuffing him. "Search the unit." Kyle protested loudly, but Ethan barely heard him. His attention was locked on the storage unit. What had Kyle been hiding? What was so important that he risked being caught? Minutes later, Ramirez and another officer emerged, their expressions grim. Ethan ran to meet them. "What did you find?" Ramirez hesitated, then knelt to his level, her voice unusually gentle. "Ethan, what we found inside, it's going to take time to sort out. But I want you to know, you did the right thing coming to us." Ethan's stomach twisted. "What did you find?" he repeated, his voice shaking. Ramirez sighed. "Personal belongings, things that match descriptions from Alyssa Green's case. And some other items we need to investigate further." Ethan swallowed hard. He didn't need her to say it outright. Whatever they had found, it was bad. Really bad. As Kyle's car pulled away, Ethan's mind raced. Something still wasn't right. If Kyle was guilty, why had he kept Alyssa's belongings instead of destroying them? And why had he waited so long to come after Ethan? That night, as Ethan sat at his desk, staring at the sunflower keychain, his laptop pinged with a new email. The sender was unknown. The subject line sent an icy chill down his spine. "You've made a mistake." His heart pounded as he opened it. "You think you've won, but you don't know the whole story. Stop digging, or you'll regret it." Attached was a photo. Ethan's breath hitched. His mother stood outside their house, keys in hand, completely unaware she was being watched. Someone was still out there. Ethan bolted from his room, his hands shaking as he shoved his phone toward Jessica. "Mom, we need to call Ramirez. Now." Jessica's face paled as she read the email. "Oh my God," she whispered. How did they get this?" "They must have been outside earlier," Ethan murmured. His throat felt dry. "They're watching us." Minutes later, Ramirez arrived, bringing extra officers with her. She read the email, her jaw tightening. "This is serious," she said. "I'm increasing patrols in the area. And Ethan, if you get any more messages, you call me. Do not try to handle this on your own." Ethan nodded, but deep down, he knew he couldn't just sit and wait for answers. The next morning, determined to find the missing piece, he dug deeper into Alyssa's case. That's when he found it. Her best friend, Rachel Daniels, had been vocal about seeking justice until she suddenly disappeared. Following his instincts, Ethan returned to the park where he had first seen Kyle. There, near the lake, half buried in the dirt, he found it, a broken sunflower bracelet. Before he could react, a shadow fell over him. "You should have stayed out of this." Ethan turned. A man in a black hoodie stood just feet away, his face obscured by the shadows. Ethan's blood ran cold. The man stepped closer. "You think you're smart, don't you?" His voice was calm, almost amused. "Poking around where you don't belong." Ethan's heart pounded. "Who are you? What do you want?" The man didn't answer. He just kept advancing. Ethan backed up, gripping the bracelet. "I'll tell the police everything." The man laughed. "The police can't help you. They're looking in the wrong place, just like you." Then he lunged. Ethan yanked away, twisting and kicking as hard as he could. His foot connected with the man's shin, making him stumble. Without thinking, Ethan bolted toward a group of joggers, waving frantically. "Help! Someone's chasing me!" The joggers turned, startled. The hooded man froze. For a split second, he hesitated, then turned and sprinted into the trees, vanishing into the shadows. When Ramirez arrived, Ethan showed her the bracelet. She examined it carefully, her expression grave. "This bracelet belonged to Rachel Daniels," she confirmed. It was reported missing months ago. Ethan's stomach twisted. So she was in the park that day. Ramirez nodded. And now someone's trying to silence you. That night, back at the safe house, Ethan barely slept. Every noise made him jump. He couldn't shake the feeling that the man in the hoodie wasn't finished with him yet. And he was right. The next evening, the man returned, this time outside the safe house. Jessica gasped when she saw him. "We need to call the police." Ethan's pulse hammered. What if he's already inside? A sudden crash from downstairs sent ice through his veins. Ramirez and her team arrived just in time. The man fled, but they were closing in. And with Ethan's evidence, the keychain, the bracelet, and Rachel's disappearance, everything started unraveling. The police soon uncovered the truth. Kyle Becker hadn't acted alone. His accomplices had helped him cover up Alyssa's murder, framed Lucas Hart, and silenced Rachel. But with Rachel's testimony and the new evidence, the case cracked open. Months later, Ethan sat in the courtroom as the verdict was read, guilty on all charges. Kyle and his accomplices were led away in handcuffs. "You did good, kid," Ramirez told him. "Because of you, we got them." Ethan exhaled, gripping the sunflower bracelet in his palm. He had risked everything to find the truth, and now justice had finally been served. As he stepped out of the courthouse, the sun shining overhead, he realized something. This had changed him forever. Courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about standing up, even when you were terrified. And sometimes, even the smallest voice could change the world.